This video contains strong language, used in a funny context. Viewer discretion advised. Number 67. Send in Jimmy.
Send in Jimmy. Oh god, I'm reminded of this. It's a first-person shooter that looks extremely like GoldenEye, and thus is bound to get some of the gamers to try it out. But unfortunately, the game's technical problems present more frustration than a decent gameplay experience. The game suffers from an unfair AI behavior with bad draw distance thick as fog. The game also suffers from excessive skipping with every 10 feet of the game, and has to pause and load up more terrain. And major slowdown occurs when there are far too many enemies on the screen. Yes, it's ugly and broken, but if you want to try it out for yourself, then by all means, be our guest.
Number 66. Home Improvement.
This game is loosely based on the once popular show Home Improvement. It's like if you made a bad version of Jurassic Park for the Genesis and put Tim Allen in it with a few Tool Time references. This is that game. For the most part, the game handles okay, but when you're put into the first level with dinosaurs, you end up questioning things. This game's supposed to be a family do-it-yourself show, right?
Number 65. Beb's Kids.
The general gameplay really just isn't any fun. You go through generic platforming levels and beat up things by using repetitive punching and kicking attacks that are hard to execute because the controls are so stiff. Most of the problems stem from the unforgiving time limit for each level, the awkward control, and the horrible collision detection, the looping and somewhat grating sound effects and music, and the fact that it takes tens if not dozens of hits for your basic attack to take down one single enemy.
Number 64. Drake of the 99 Dragons.
There is nothing about this game that works. The fighting, the graphics, the storyline. With how many early Xbox games that were terrible, it's amazing the system survived long enough to hit its groove. Drake is one game that most likely won't top anyone's list to make it Xbox 360 compatible.
Number 63. Supernova's Arc 3D.
This pitiful title was surely the worst game ever released for the Super Nintendo. You play as Old Testament folk Noah with the task of rounding up all the animals wandering around the Ark. Ironically, this attempt to instill Christian values in young gamers was built using the Wolfenstein 3D engine, one of the most violent games of its time. It's safe to say that the only kids unfortunate enough to play it were those fundamentalist parents who forced them to.
Number 62. A Bug's Life.
What was a bad game on PlayStation is now an awful game on the Nintendo 64. With uninspired levels that seem to have no basis whatsoever to the movie, and extremely touchy controls, it's a wonder who this game was even targeted to. The game suffers from horrible draw distance, with unbearably bad fog which clips objects in dysfunctions shapes. This game is almost impossible for hardcore gamers because of its flaws and indestructible enemies. Kids will surely tire of it immediately.
Number 61. Robocop.
The game allows the player to play as RoboCop and uncover a sinister plot. As a last hope, RoboCop must capture, destroy, or arrest hostile characters in a desperate search for clues and evidence. RoboCop has a heavy amount of horrible problems that render the game practically unplayable at times, and when it comes to graphics, RoboCop just doesn't look good at all. Every environment in the game is drab, ugly, and extremely poorly textured. Every single aspect of RoboCop feels like it was thrown together at the last minute, and the end result is a game that, for all intents and purposes, is just no fun at all.
Number 60. Irritating Stick.
Oh my god. Okay. Irritating Stick is based on a Japanese game show. On the show, contestants take a giant electrical rod and maneuver it through metal maze within a time limit. Irritating Stick captures some of the essence of the TV show, but in the end, it just isn't any fun, and in fact, it's irritating to play, so just avoid it, seriously.
Number 59. Platoon.
The video game adaptation of the critically acclaimed Charlie Sheen movie did as video game adaptations are supposed to do. Suck. But this game sucked more than normal. The bullets that were fired travelled slowly, enemy soldiers were always able to appear out of nowhere, such as dropping from the sky, landing on top of you and killing you instantly. Setting the game in a jungle maze with repeating scenery robbed players of any sense of direction, and made the game a complete waste of time and money.
Number 58. Mario's Early Years, Preschool Fun.
Mario's Early Years. Preschool Fun is a one-class ticket straight to hell, which completely makes the Nintendo team feel uncomfortable every time this piece of shit is mentioned. The voices in the game always have a second-long pause in between every word, making it sound like a robotic kid talking to you like a complete dumbass. There also seems to be a frame rate issue, as the music constantly speeds up and slows down at random intervals. For no logical reason, the graphics completely destroy the sprites of Mario, Luigi, Peach, and Yoshi as they appear flatter, and Yoshi becomes horribly thin when he faces the screen. The content is boring, and even preschoolers will find nothing fun in this useless garbage.
Number 57. Kabuki Warriors.
This game almost killed Microsoft's video game dreams. Kabuki Warriors graphics are about half of a step above its gameplay. Opening and ending animated sequences are very poor, in-game animations are just as bad. The game had one major flaw though. If you can master the A button, you will go far in this game. So the shallow fighting system, ugly characters, general laziness involved in Microsoft for approving this game is just fucking simply disgusting.
Number 56. Catechumen.
The game is set in Roman times right after the advent of Christianity. You play a nameless catechumen, set forth by an angel to free your imprisoned teacher, all the while saving Roman minds from demon infestation. In today's day and age, it really needs to be more compelling. The game is visually enough to give you a headache at times. Objects in the distance have the wrong degree of sharpness. Rendered bitmaps are slightly blurry, and the animation is limited to just a few stick figure movements. If things weren't weird enough, the music is terrifying. Most of the game manages to turn out some generic action game music. Other time you get creepy demon sounds, evil rumblings from left to right, and then for no reason at all, you'll walk into a room and be blasted by heavy metal! What the seriously? While the game is not entirely as broken as it sounds, it's still pretty shoddy, and best to check it out for yourself.
Number 55. Elf Bowling.
To begin with, you can already get this game as freeware on your PC. The DC version is even worse, as they remove some animations and options, which is unacceptable since games were so minimalist in the first place, but even then, everything is about as awful as it gets. The graphics are pathetic, the music is all but non-existent, and the sound is bad. Gameplay-wise, just above poor.
Number 54. Bad Boys, Miami Takedown.
This game was released to coincide with Bad Boys 2. It had two horrible representations of Martin Lawrence and Will Smith that somehow managed to be even worse by spouting horrible dialogue. The controls in this game are extremely broken, and when you shoot, you are actually expected to have terrible aiming.
Number 53. FBI, Hostage Rescue.
The game is the epitome of terrible programming and AI. Gameplay problems crop up everywhere you look. There's no way to tone down the high mouse sensitivity. Unlocked doors sometimes open on their own accord, and sometimes they don't. Players can get stuck in the scenery, meaning they need to restart the mission. Often the game will crash and revert back to the desktop. The game's presentation doesn't fare much better than the gameplay. Characters repeat the same lines over and over. The weapons sound generic. There's no reason at all to buy this game when you can play better games like Counter-Strike, SWAT 3, or Rainbow Six.
Number 52. Star Wars, Masters of Terrascasi.
I'm going to start off by saying I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and I've never even heard about this game. But from what I've looked at it, it looks absolutely horrible and disgraces the whole entire franchise. Basically, it features a bunch of beloved Star Wars characters and a whole lot of annoying second stringers beating the ever-loving crap out of each other in a stiff and badly designed manner. It also leads to some pretty confusing questions, like, why would a Jedi need to use hand-to-hand combat when they have a lightsaber that basically just leaps into their hand, and the ability to throw things around with their mind, and essentially no need to use their fist to beat somebody up whatsoever? Even the most rabid Star Wars fan would chuck the thing into a deep hole and forget about it.
Number 51. Catfight.
From the opening's options screen, the game is absolutely impossible to control. Catfight's graphics are blocky and pixelated, and the color palette is horrible. The soundtrack consists of annoying and repetitive squeals backed up by a heavy metal guitar. And adding to insult to injury, turning the sound off in the options menu has absolutely no effect.
Number 50. Fifth Element.
The graphics are grainy, loaded with seams, awkward perspectives, blind platform jumps, and pop-ups from the get-go, and you know what's better? They don't improve. The enemy AI is laughable as well, and when in the same room with several enemies, if you're attacking one, the others seem to just linger around and move up when the first guy's down. The game's not fun, not pretty, and definitely not challenging. Do yourself a favor and buy the movie and not the game. Seriously. Don't.
Number 49. The New Testament.
You play as a person who follows Jesus through his history of the New Testament, from his time with John the Baptist to his crucifixion and resurrection. Sounds like a good enough game, but this is where things start getting a little bit strange. First of all, it's built on an engine created for wrestling games, and is pretty violent and bloody. The game is unrated, but I'm sure it would get an M for violence if it was actually released. What's more is that the eye animations are pretty freaky, how they continuously stare like a madman, like he just did something horribly wrong. The game itself does provide some unrealistic, albeit entertaining character customization, such as making your character anything from a giant to a tiny little man. The dialogue speeches are pretty disturbing too, especially when you see Jesus quoting things like destroying mankind by shooting fire from your fingertips, or touch me again and I will kill you. There are also some pretty weird quotes in the loading screens from people like Confucius, Buddha, Muhammad, Osama bin Laden. Wait. Osama bin Laden? What? Barack Obama, Bruce Lee, and even Kanye West. That made no sense in a biblical game whatsoever. It's like some sort of mashup of Christianity with all sorts of false religions. It sort of stops your gaming experience for a while and makes you really question some things.
Number 48. Jumper, Griffin's Story.
Even with its teleportation spin, this game is a derivative fighter that looks as bad as it plays. Technical glitches mean half of Griffin's body will get stuck in a wall and the camera will be temporarily positioned behind the wall Griffin is fighting there, so you can't even see who you're brawling against. Do yourself a favor and watch the impressive movie instead. You'll find a lot more enjoyment from watching that than playing this piece of shit.
Number 47. Revelations 2012.
Just when we thought the zombie survival horror games couldn't get any worse, we get this. Revelations 2012 is hands down the worst first-person shooter horror survival game ever. It just looks like a Left 4 Dead mod, and to say it's classed as a full game is disgusting. We have bad AI, worse than the ones in Left 4 Dead series, a stupid plot to the story which involves Mayans' end of the world theory, and laughable sound effects. Revelations 2012 is just pure garbage, and you shouldn't play it. And if you're trying to find a better review than this one, good luck.
Number 46. Aquaman, Battle for Atlantis.
This was named as the worst GameCube game ever, and I can see why. At first, the fighting just seems easy and stupid, but eventually the gameplay reveals itself to be annoying and frustrating. The camera, once again, like the rest of these games, operates on its own free will during combat, and often ends up positioning itself in a way that gives you virtually no perspective on the action, and has a tendency to move violently and randomly, and it'll give you more of a headache than anything. Most of the time, the game moves at a reasonable frame rate, though there's some truly bad choppiness during the submarine sequences. The sound is even worse, and consists solely of an adventure tone score and some bland punch and kick sounds.
Number 45. Spice World.
The Spice World video game stars the Spice Girls! Woohoo! In this thoughtless, rushed mess of a game, the ultimate goal is to set up a Spice Girls concert. Sounds like a blast to me. You guide your hideous, super deformed Spice Girl of choice through mixing your own version of a Spice Girls song from the very small library of songs that this game offers, and they don't even play the whole song. In the end, you get to see the girls dance for you. And that's it. The whole game can be finished in 10 minutes. That is, of course, if you even can survive that 10 minutes without dying of boredom first.
Number 44. Taxi Racer.
It feels like you're trapped in a never-ending cycle, forever doomed to be driving down the same road again and again. There's no story to that at all. The game suffers from a huge amount of technical bugs. Sometimes you'll be driving along just fine, when suddenly the road beneath you vanishes and you fall into a never-ending void. Same goes with the buildings and other cars, who will one minute be there, the next they won't. Either flying, falling, or just suddenly vanish without a trace before your eyes.
Number 43. Hong Kong 97.
A game made in Japan in 1995 for the Super Famicom by Happy Soft Limited. The game has gained a cult following in Japan and Taiwan for its notoriously poor quality. It has been ranked a Kusho game, literally meaning shitty game in Japanese. A game considered so bad that it's good. The game handles much like a bad version of Robotron, and if Chin is hit by anything, the game is automatically over, and a gruesome image of a corpse appears on the game over screen.
Number 42. Trespasser.
It looked like a great game when announced. It had good gameplay when it worked, and it had one of the most interesting features a game could have at the time. The new mechanics was the ability to control your character's arm and hands. Trouble was, it sucked. Apart from looking like an elephant's trunk with fingers, your arms and hands had a tendency to ignore what you told it to do. You felt as graceful and useful as a drunk searching for the front door keys, and with a considerable number of bugs, pathetic frame rates and difficult gameplay, it's no wonder why many gamers laid down and let the raptors munch them into lunch.
Number 41. Descent to Undermountain.
Okay, let's see. The graphics are horrible, there's a terrible frame rate, uninspiring story, weak audio, boring gameplay, and repetitive mini-quests filled with bugs are all what came with this PC game back so early in the 90s. The inclusion of talking to monsters by clicking on the text and speech dialogue also became boring too. One game you should definitely avoid.
Number 40. Home Alone 2.
It's a car crash of a game. It looks bad and plays worse, and it's one of those games that will probably leave you wondering why you didn't spend that part of your life, now forever lost, doing something more fun like shooting zombies or flying a jet. It's difficult to think of one single redeeming feature of this game that really sets it apart from other games. We'll simply say that Home Alone 2 is quite terrifyingly awful, and that if you've never played it, just do yourself a favor and don't even try it.
Number 39. Captain Novelin.
First off, this is a game about diabetes. Yes, diabetes. And from the looks of it, it was put together not to educate children about it, but to blatantly taunt their disease. Captain Novelin only has one ability, hopping. And since the control is so bad, he usually can't even do that right. Your main enemy is a bouncing donut or a walking snack. To be honest, the whole premise is ridiculous that there is really no reason at all to play this in the first place.
Number 38. X-Men.
The first thing that you'll notice is that the one-player mode forces you to take a CPU-controlled second player who just seems to have a completely random AI routine, usually keeps running up against a wall or into enemies, and takes your power-up and eventually dies in some trap. Some basic enemies emerge from the ground without warning and are right in front of you, which causes you to take a cheap, unavoidable hit of damage. Even worse, there are parts of the floor on many stages that cause damage to your character without looking like any kind of hazard. This game stands as a true test of how bad a comic-based game could be, and a shining example of the fact that companies know comic fans will buy a game no matter how sucky it looks.
Number 37. Conquest of the Planet Earth.
This horrible Xbox Live indie game cost 240 Microsoft points and is probably one of the worst first-person shooters of all time. The graphics are bland, the interface is terrible, and the level design is boring. The game seems to have some sort of light problem too, with the whole game turning black for no reason. There's no story to the game and the overall feel itself lacks polish. This game should be removed from the marketplace and is definitely one to avoid for every gamer.
Number 36. Human Killing Machine.
Human Killing Machine for the Atari is a ripoff of the first Street Fighter game made by Teartex. The game lacks special moves, a two-player mode, and scrolling levels. There are god-awful ethnic stereotypes in the game and occasionally cruelty to animals. Starting off at the bad controls resulted in making the game more difficult to beat. Furthermore, the developers made it so all of a given character's frames of animation could be squashed into a single screen's worth of space, which had the unfortunate consequence of the final boss having only 6 frames of animation.
Number 35. Xenophage, Alien Bloodsport.
Xenophage Alien Bloodsport is a pretty bad one-on-one fighting game in the same style as Mortal Kombat, featuring some ridiculous characters to play as. First of all, the characters aren't hand-drawn or digitized, but graphically rendered. Also, the game uses a technique first seen in Samurai Showdown, where the view zooms in and out to give the players the best possible view of the action. Not the best idea. It's bound to give you a headache after a while.